Hello everyone. Today is January 9, 2019. This is my sixth episode about the C and C++ concept. In this episode, we will learn clarification between declaration and definition. We will also learn about the partial type and fully defined type. For most C and C++ beginners, demarcation between declaration and definition is quite challenging. So this is MSDN documentation. I double clicked it. In this MSDN documentation, they try to explain what is declaration and what is definition. Also in this link, C++ reference, this document also details about what is declaration. All these documents are correct. Explanation in both documents are probably correct, but it's very hard to understand for C and C++ beginners. It's pretty challenging to understand the difference. I tried to clarify the difference between declaration and definition. So this is my explanation. Declaration introduces new name into C and C++ program. When you see declaration, you can just say introduction of new names into C and C++ program. But definition is a little bit more complicated. Definition defines memory layout for an instance type and or resolves memory for instance. So declarations plays two roles. It defines memory layout and resolves memory. When definition defines memory layout for an instance type, we usually put that memory layout definition in header file. But when definition resolves memory for an instance, then we usually put definition in C source file. It might seem a little bit complicated, but don't worry, I will give you a concrete example in this session. I start Visual Studio 2017 from File, New, Project, Visual C++ Windows Desktop Wizard. Solution name will be Declaration, Definition, Solution. Project name will be Declaration, Definition. Click OK. Please unselect precompiled header and security development lifecycle check. Then select empty project. Then click OK. Right click source files. Add new item. C++ files here. You can see main.c. This is main module. And we will add another file. Add new. Now we will add my lib.c. So we added two source files. Select main C file. Here we will include standard stdioh and I create int main. We are creating function main like this. Then printf hello C. We created a simple program. Now Ctrl F5 to build and run. Now it works. I will make it smaller and I will show it side by side. Here I define a function here, int_sum, int_a, int_b. Okay. Then I make function body like this, return a plus b. Please note that in this state the name sum is introduced for the first time to this program, so it is declaration. At the same time, function sum has its body, a function body, so it reserves memory for this function. Since it reserves memory, it is also definition. Okay. So in this case, this is function declaration as well as function definition. When function has function body, it becomes function definition as well. Because this name sum is introduced for the first time in this program, this is also declaration. Now save. Here we are calling, this is totally different file. We are calling this function from function main. like this, int s equals sum 2, 3, like this. And here we fix a little bit. 2 plus 3 equals %d. I fixed like this, s. Okay. Now Control F7. Control F7 compiles, but if we compile Control F7, the C compiler warnings, sum undefined, assuming extern return int. Now let's build Control F5. Let's see if it works. It somehow worked, but this is not good practice. When the program gets very complicated, this kind of programming is very dangerous. Let's compile once again, Control F7. So it gives warning like this, sum undefined. Double click it, sum undefined in this message. Then we can declare like this, int sum int int. Okay. Now if we compile once again Control F7, then there would be no warning. So there is no warning. This is declaration. This is declaration. The name sum is introduced to this file main.c for the first time, and function sum does not reserve memory, so it is declaration. If we examine this line of code carefully, the C compiler should know the return type of function sum, in this case int. Also the compiler should know the parameter count 2 and the parameter types int and int. Though int sum int is called declaration, it identifies the function sum's memory layout. So the declaration introduces the name for the first time in the C file. It also identifies the memory layout in case of function declaration. As I explained in the beginning of this session, declaration introduces new name into C and C++ program, and we usually put all declaration in the header file, and when definition reserves memory for an instance, we usually put that definition in C source file. So following this rule, here I click this button, I will create a header file, add new header file. I will name it my lib.h. I added a header file. I don't need this. If not def, my lib underscore h, and if end of file, here define. I copy and paste it. I will talk more about these preprocessors in some future sessions. For the time being, just bear with me. This is called function prototype. We copy this is declaration. This part of function is called prototype or function signature, but I would call it function type. Okay, so this forms function declaration. I saved, and here we don't need this any longer. Okay, we don't need this declaration. Instead, I include this file. Include this header file, my lib. Since this is function definition, it reserves memory. We should put the function definition in C file because it reserves memory. When definition reserves memory for an instance, we usually put that definition in C source file. So we put function definition in C source file, and declaration introduce new name into C and C++ program. We usually put all declaration in header file. So I put the declaration in header file .h file. Then we include the header file to our C file, another C file. Now let's build Ctrl F5. Now it should work successfully. Now this time we are going to define global variable double phi 21.0 divided 7.0. Please note that we defined the global variable pi. This is declaration because we introduced a new name phi to this my lib.c source file. This is also definition because it reserves memory for phi. Because this is declaration because we introduce a new name phi into this my lib.c source file. This is also definition because this reserves memory for phi. This is also definition. Now to use this global variable, we can calculate like this: double area 2 times 2 times phi like this. Printf area is %lf area like this. Now Control F5. So the C compiler complains phi is undeclared identifier. So here we declare like this: double phi. We declared, but it can be definition as well. So we inform C compiler extern like this. This extern keyword informs C and C++ compiler that this entity phi is defined somewhere. Now let's compile. Control F5 again. Now it works. So this is declaration. In case of a function, keyword extern is optional. Okay, I put extern here, and also in my function here, extern. Okay, in case of function declaration or definition, keyword extern is optional. Now we declare this variable here, extern, and we cannot initialize. We cannot initialize when we declare a variable. We have to specify the declared variable with keyword extern. This extern means the variable is defined somewhere. But in this header file, we can also use extern. We can also use keyword extern when we define global variable in C source file. In this case, we have to initialize the variable. In this case, since we are declaring a global variable, we should not initialize. So this point is very important to understand. Extern variable with initialization means this variable or instance is accessible outside of this file. In this case, my lib.c. Now let's build, save all. Let's build. Then we don't need this. Control F5. Okay, it works perfectly. I will talk more about keyword extern in some other future sessions. For the time being, what is important in this session is that declaration does not simply introduce a new name. It informs the C and C++ compiler the memory layout of the declared object. So this is not actually correct. Declaration introduces new names into C and C++ program, but this is not actually correct. Declaration also informs the compiler the memory layout of the object or instance. But this is not also perfectly correct. In some cases, this can also be wrong. Back here, some is a name with type int, int, int. Okay, some is a name with type int, int. Some is an instance of type int, int, int. This declaration informs the C++ compiler the name. Sum is an instance of type int, int, int. This type int, int, int is sum's type. Here in the same manner, this is declaration introducing a new name file. Its type is double, so type defines the memory layout. In this case, double is usually 8 bytes. In this sum's type int, int, int defines sum is an instance of function which returns an integer, an int, and takes 2 ints as parameter. So this declaration defines sum's stack structure, or is called functions stack frame. I will talk more about the stack frame in some future sessions, and I will fix here one thing more. This is wrong value. This is closer to 5. Please note that using global variable in programming is very bad practice. Instead of doing this, let's use constant, external constant like this. I fixed, and here also I will fix constant like this. I fixed. Please understand that when you are creating program, never use global variables. If you ever have to use global variables, make it constant global variables. When you are creating a huge program, a very big program, using global variables is really bad practice. If you follow my advice, you can create very huge programs in future. Now compile, now save all, and build once again, Ctrl F5. Okay. Now let's build and compile. Ctrl F5. Okay, the result is closer to correct value. Now I'm going to explain what is partial type in main C program file. In this main C file, here we are going to define a type, struct, link. So we defined the link here. We declared a type called link. This is declaration, because we introduced the name link for the first time in main.c. Okay, then we define struct double link, and here we can define int value link. Okay, at this point double linked, we cannot access this way. This type link is not yet fully defined. Here, defined means its memory layout is not yet defined. So it is called partial type. And here we can define the struct link. At this point we can use double link DL. We have to use a struct. Also we have to use a struct. At this point the memory layout of double linked is fully defined. So we can use fully defined type at this point. However, at this point, link is not yet fully defined. So we cannot use an instance of link yet. If we compile it, double linked here, struct, double linked DL, Ctrl F5, it does not work. Say link uses undefined struct. At this point we cannot use link this way. This does not work. However, we can still use partial type as pointer. So in this point we can say link struct link pointer lnk. This is pointer. We can use this partial type as pointer. If we build Ctrl F5, it compiles successfully. It should run successfully like this. I hope you understand what is partial type. At this point, link is partial type, so we cannot use link partial type like this way. We cannot use an instance of link yet because link's memory layout is not yet defined. However, we can still use partial type as pointer like this. In case of double link is fully defined at this point, so this is fully defined type. So we can use an instance. We can use an instance of fully defined type. And this is definition. This is full definition of a type struct link. So this declaration introduces new name into C and C++ program, also informs compiler the memory layout of the object or instance. But this is still not perfectly correct because partial declaration does not define memory layout. So I hope you understand why I explained like this. Now we want to use these types in here, totally different file. My libc, I create a function beast links. I would say double linked. I put double linked. I will use pointer dlp. I will explain more about pointer in some future sessions. Please bear with me. I copied like this. I saved. Then we have to let compiler know about double linked list. So struct double linked. We can do like this. We can fix our code like this. INTA, for example, like this. Then if we call this function, it works. Say I will call this function visit. I need to declare it. I declared it. Then I paste DL. I will talk more about function pointer in some future sessions. Just build Ctrl F5. Please note that it works because we haven't accessed the double link in this function. If we access it, DLP, we access, for example, it has member called value. Now it does not work. Let's build Ctrl F5. No, it does not work. The message says value specifies undefined because in this function, C compiler cannot determine member of double linked. C compiler cannot determine what is value. So we disable this. We disabled and we copy the type definition up to this point, copied, and we paste it here. We paste here. Okay, save. Now in this case, we need to provide this header file. So here we include my type lib. I saved because in this file, double linked is fully defined. The memory layout is defined here. In this file, this function works. Now it knows what is double linked. So this perfectly works. Now let's build and run. Ctrl F5. So it works perfectly. Please note that partial declaration introduces names but does not define memory layout. In this case, this is full definition and declaration because the name double linked is first introduced and also defines memory layout of double linked. So this is definition as well as declaration. This is full definition. The type of struct is struct link, but it is full definition. Now I hope you understand what is partial type. Now I hope you understand what is declaration and what is definition. Also what is a partial type and what is fully defined type. These concepts may be a little bit difficult or challenging if you are new C or C+ programmer, but in future sessions I will talk more about these things. The contents of this video can be a little bit challenging if you are new C and C++ programmer. Please leave your comments and questions, then I will answer you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.